So it's really about helping other people as a form of heroism. It's really about gratitude, I imagine, for the people who saved Aharon's life by helping him out when he was a child.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. Adam and Thomas by Aharon Appelfeld was the winner of the 2016 Sidney Taylor Book Award. It was translated from Hebrew to English by Jeffrey Green. Appelfeld was not able to attend the Association of Jewish Libraries conference to receive his award, but Green was there to represent the book. In this recording, you'll hear Ellen Tillman of the Awards Committee tell about her meeting with Appelfeld in Israel, and you'll hear from Jeffrey Green himself about the experience of translating Adam and Thomas, speaking at the AJL conference in Charleston, South Carolina in June 2016.
When Aharon Appelfeld informed Diane that he was not able to attend AJL because of his age and his inability to travel, I had an out-of-the-box idea. I volunteered to deliver the award to him personally in Jerusalem. My husband and I were traveling to Israel at the end of March to attend the Bat Mitzvah. Delivering the STBA award would be a joy. We made arrangements to meet Aharon and his wife Yehudit in the Jerusalem apartment late one afternoon. They had moved to a beautiful Rehavi apartment from a home in Mevatzeret Zion about a year ago. Appelfeld missed his garden in his home, but this apartment had less steps and was easier to manage. The Appelfelds have been married for 52 years. They have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. The apartment is decorated with their son's paintings. Yehudit baked for our visit, serving delicious homemade strudel and Israeli cheesecake, which she informed us is baked with white cheese, not the cream cheese we use here in America. Aharon was thrilled to receive our award, and he thanks the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee for recognizing Adam and Thomas. He writes for 5 hours every day. He works with a pen and a paper, not a computer. A secretary comes in periodically, and he dictates his work to her very carefully, reading a sentence, the punctuation, and identifying where their new paragraphs should come. I asked to see his office where he worked, but he declined, saying that the room was not yet settled for visitors. The day before our visit, I had purchased a copy of Adam and Thomas in Hebrew for Appelfeld to sign for my daughter, who speaks and reads Hebrew fluently. He was impressed by an American child who did not have Israeli parents or grandparents who could understand a book in Hebrew. I was amazed by the differences in the printed books. The illustrations, the binding, the typestyle, etc. were totally different. The Israeli and the U.S. markets apparently are very, very different. Appelfeld speaks beautiful English, but he asked his wife to write the dedication to Joe Taylor Marshall in English, while he just signed his name in English. He's written more than 50 books that have been translated into 35 languages. He has copies of each one on the many bookshelves in his apartment. His professional papers are available at Ben Gurion University in Beersheba, where he served as a literature professor for many years. Aharon shared the many honorary degrees that he received with us from JTS, Yeshiva University, the Jewish Book Council, UAHC, etc. And he enjoyed discussing mutual New York academic friends with my husband David. It was an honor for me to visit one of Israel's legendary authors and to personally give him our Sidney Taylor Book Award.
Thank you, Ellen. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Jeffrey Green. Jeffrey has taught at Hebrew University. He worked at the World Zionist Organization and then became a freelance translator in 1979. He began working with Aharon Appelfeld in the mid-1980s and has translated 13 books for him. In addition, he has translated many other books and articles from Hebrew and French, from literary and some academic. It's my pleasure to welcome Jeff.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. I'll begin by describing the book. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read it. It's a story about 2 boys whose mothers bring them to the forest when they're about to be shipped off to concentration camps. And the mothers give the kids separately knapsacks full of stuff and say, we'll come back in the evening. And of course the mothers don't manage to come back in the evening, and the boys survive in the forest for almost a year until finally the Red Army comes and liberates the area. And miraculously, their mothers are still there alive, and their mothers are alive too. And this is connected very closely to Aharon's biography. I don't know if you're aware of that. He was born in 1932. His mother was murdered more or less in front of his eyes in the beginning of the war. And then he and his father were shipped off to a labor camp in what they call Transnistria. He comes from Bukovina, from Chernihiv, and was then Romania, now it's the Ukraine. And on the way, his father, I believe, I'm not sure, said, run. And so he just ran off, and so he survived alone as a young child, like these two boys in the book that he wrote. Of course, he had no idea that his father survived, and his father had no idea that he survived until the father arrived in Israel sometime, maybe 8 years after Aharon. And it's these stories where they would watch, you'd see names all during the 50s. People would say, these people have arrived in Israel and they have any relatives. And he saw the name Appelfeld. It's a very uncommon name, and he found out that his father was perhaps a man who might have been his father was working in an orchard in a moshav. And he went to the moshav and he saw a man picking apples, and he said to him in Chernivtsi German, because that's the language that they spoke, are you Mr. Appelfeld? And he said, yes. Well, I think I'm your son. And that's an amazing story. And so that's the happy ending of Appelfeld's life. He wrote another book. It's called The Blooms of Darkness, which won a really big, important prize in England, the Independent Foreign Fiction Prize. And that book is virtually the same story. It's about a young boy whose mother spirits him out of the ghetto, except she hides him in a house of prostitution, and he's in this house of prostitution for a couple of years. And while he's a young pre-pubescent and then adolescent, then it's a book that no child could possibly understand. And it's an amazingly good book. I really recommend it highly. And I asked him why he wrote this book for younger readers, and I don't think he had it in mind initially to write it for younger readers. He said he didn't. He just wrote it, and it turned out to be for younger readers. And to do that, it's very problematic, right? In the first place, it has to be accessible. In the second place, it can't be too horrifying. You can't really load the whole Holocaust on the heads of a 12 or 8 or 9-year-old reader, whatever it be. It's impossible. So the Holocaust in this is in the background. He talks about the ghetto, he talks about what's happening to the Jews and the fear, but it's not major. What it really is he turned it into an adventure story. Two boys survive in the woods. But what's interesting about the book, and the Hebrew title of it you could translate as A Girl from Another World, or something like that. They were very smart. The French translation picked Adam and Thomas, and then the American publisher picked it up, and it was a really good idea. By the way, the French edition, Dubois is a French illustrator, and they took the illustrations from that and designed a beautiful book. So the book is about people helping. The boys would never have survived unless this girl who was sent by her mother to live with some peasants, they discover her milking a cow, and she sneaks food out of the peasant's house and spirits it to the boys on the edge of the clearing in the forest where the farm is. And without that, they would have died. Later on, they meet a peasant, not a Jewish, a Ukrainian peasant, who also gives them food. And so it's about how they get helped and how they could never have survived without other people's help. And also they themselves extend help to people in the woods. They hear shooting and they hear people running through the forest, and wounded people collapse at the foot of the tree where they're hiding, and they go down, they bandage up their wounds and send them on. So it's really about helping other people as a form of heroism. It's really about gratitude, I imagine, for the people who saved Aharon's life by helping him out when he was a child in the woods. Once I asked him whether he ever told his kids, when I was your age, I was hiding, and he said, I'm ashamed to say I really did. However, so for me as a translator, I've translated his books for adult readers. I'm not afraid to use somewhat difficult language and to try and transmit some of the difficulties of Aharon's Hebrew into English. I couldn't do that in this translation. It had to be accessible, something that a younger reader could read easily without getting confused by anything. And that was hard for me. I've been living in Israel since 1973, and I'm not really that close to the language that young adults read, so it was a challenge for me just to find out the register of a language that would resonate with the younger reader. And the other thing is, of course, my childhood was nothing like Aharon's childhood, thank God. I grew up in a very comfortable middle-class home in Manhattan, and I never was abandoned in a forest, and my parents stayed alive. And so, as a translator, Aharon is writing from his personal experience. I'm writing from a reader's experience, trying to be empathetic, and I'm passing it on to other readers. And I'm here, as I am here, I'm sort of standing in Aharon's stead. And that's the challenge of it. Isn't only linguistic, and it's also the challenge of trying to represent him as fairly as possible, but being totally aware all the time that I'm not him in any sense. So I've been working with him for a long time, and I think I might actually have come to the end of that because I had a fight with the editor at Schocken about my most recent translation. We'll see how this plays out. But it's been very rewarding, and I think the main reason why I've been successful working with him is my huge admiration for him. I think he's really a major writer, not just a good writer, but I think he's an important writer. I think what he has to say is very important. Really, he's a Jewish writer. He's not an Israeli writer, and he's writing about the fate of the Jewish people. He really tries to recreate in his novels something he couldn't possibly remember himself. He was 8 or 9 when he ran away, and he's making up memories of the life of the Jews of Central Europe, Bukovina, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Some of his books go back to the early 20th century. Some of them are 1930s, and then some are during the Holocaust, but never directly about the camps or anything. And then some of them are about the traumatic efforts of people to recover and try and live a normal life, which is almost impossible. And the latest book, which is coming out in January, is about a young man. It's him again, but not really him, who comes to Israel and his hachshara is a preparation to become a kibbutznik, and he gets wounded in the War of Independence, and almost immediately he recovered. The whole novel is really about being wounded, recovering, and his crazy decision to become an author, and how he somehow struggles to make the Hebrew language his own. I hope when it comes out that it'll be well received. This book, for younger readers, it's very accessible for an adult who would take maybe an hour and a half to read. He claims that it's not really for younger readers. He claims that it's for all readers. The major difference is that I started out talking about the Book of the Blooms of Darkness, that his other books are very dark. They're very pessimistic. They're very ironic. They're about Jewish people their whole Jewish culture is more or less collapsed in Central Europe. It's about empty synagogues and people who convert and people who run away from the Judaism and people who are very confused. Central European Jews in the assimilated Central European Jews in what was once the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In a way, there's kind of foreshadowing that the collapse of Jewish culture there kind of foreshadows the horrible collapse, the ultimate collapse, destruction that's going to follow, and it's always in his mind as a writer, and it's in the reader's mind as a reader, but the characters, of course, have no idea that they're headed for this horrible destruction. And that kind of irony, you could never pass it off to a younger reader, and I think that's one reason why he's not a particularly popular writer, because he's really not much fun, to be honest with you. But I think he's really deep. I think he has a lot to say about the Jewish people. And the other really major Hebrew writer in the 20th century was Agnon. And Agnon, he also wrote with realization that Jewish life in Europe had been destroyed. And he was trying to, in his books, recreate the Jewish world that no longer existed. And to some degree, Aharon is the same way. Agnon was a very, very learned Jew and had the whole complete Jewish library memorized. But Aharon seems as if he's someone who's never read a book in his life. His books are very, very simplistic. They're not even realistic. They're almost like dreams. He never has details about how a lamp was plugged in or the name of a brand or something like that. He's totally uninterested in the specifics of historical reality. It's like a dream of what things were like. In fact, he's a very learned and well-read man, and his lack of sophistication is actually opposed, because he's extremely sophisticated in real life. But the books, if you read them, I don't know how many of you read his books, but they're written in a way that sounds as if this person who wrote it never read anything except what he's writing himself. but he has written books. So I recommend this book highly. I also recommend to try and push his other books because I think they have a lot to say about being Jewish today, and they're very important, I think. So thank you for your attention.
Books have dedication pages, and libraries have dedication plaques. The Book of Life podcast has dedications too. Here's a dedication for our next episode.
Hi, this is Adam Gidwitz, author of The Inquisitor's Tale, or The Three Magical Children and Their Holy Dog. I'll be joining you on the Book of Life podcast soon. I'd like to dedicate my appearance to all the people in this country who have been fighting hard for love, for tolerance, for acceptance in what has been a very difficult political season. Talk to you soon.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. Leave a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can also like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast. Follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida at cbiboca.org and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening and happy reading.